So I feel very much that for the postmodern self, that that when we realize how important we are, it's gonna help in a way that nothing else had to liberate ourselves from being trapped in our small selves. And the reason I'm saying that we're so important is because if we didn't exist in the highly developed form that we do now, the energy and intelligence that initiated the creative process, or God for lack of a better word, which is who we all really are anyway, would not be able to not only behold what he or she or created, but even more importantly, wouldn't be able to take responsibility for the very process that he or she created. Because if God created the universe, if he, she, or it is the energy and intelligence that initiated the creative process, imagine what happened was something like you're going to do something, but you know once you do it, you're going to fall into a state of unconsciousness. So once that energy and intelligence took the leap from formlessness into form, like a big deep breath was taken, and then that's when the Big Bang happened. There was this big leap from formlessness into form, and then all of manifestation emerged. But the energy and intelligence that created it went into an unconscious state. Like energy and intelligence can work unconsciously. Your heart is beating, right? Your heart's being monitored. Your lungs are working. All your biologicals. You're never thinking about it. You're not aware of it, right? So in the same way, the evolutionary process has been evolving unconsciously. But now, as we awaken to it, the process awakens to itself. So the whole evolutionary process, the cosmos, awakens to itself through us. And that's why you're important. That's why I'm important. That's why we're important. And believe me, when you discover this, not just theoretically or intellectually, but authentically, when these are not just mere words, it changes your life. Because then, a lot of spiritual teachers like tell people, you are unique, you are wonderful. But this is just, to me, this is the worst thing you can tell a narcissist. Because that's what people want to hear anyway. And it's not necessarily true. I mean, some people are more wonderful than others. A lot of people aren't that wonderful. Oops, sorry. But when you begin to realize that the reason why you're so important is because of your capacity, not only to cognize the whole process, but even ultimately take responsibility for where it's going, that makes you really important. You get my point? I mean, it could not get bigger. It could not get bigger. It could not get more profound. It could not get more significant. And so the awakening, or the new enlightenment, is really going to be very much about this. Because really, if you can understand this, nothing else really makes sense. You see? Because so much of the postmodern, post-traditional spirituality is really about how can I find a way to cope, to feel better about my neurosis, about my fears, about my anxieties, about all the things that we experience, which might be okay, but it's still very much all about the individual. The whole point of this new awakening is that you realize that the life experience you're having now is not really about you. Never has been. It's not about your experience and your process and your journey. I mean, that's part of it, but that's not the point. That's all by the way. It becomes very obviously by the way when you begin to get who you really are, when you begin to cognize and grasp how big this process is and how dependent the evolution of the process is on you. Because if you don't take responsibility for where the process is going, what's going to happen? Because if you remember, if there's nobody up there who's driving, the image I like to use, the picture I like to use, or image I like to use to kind of explain this to people, if you imagine that you were asleep and then you began to wake up, you began to open your eyes, and then you realized that you were in the back of a car, and the car was moving, but as you were awakened, you realized there was nobody in the driver's seat, right? So that's kind of where we are. Because you remember, in the pre-modern era, we thought, there was a divine being who was in the driver's seat, but now we realize there is no divine being in the driver's seat. Or let me put it this way. There has been a divine being in the driver's seat up until somewhere around now. Which is true, because we didn't, we didn't end up here by accident, you know. We didn't end up here by accident. When you really get it, see, when you really get it, it totally destroys your ego. Because it terrifies you, it's frightening, and it's also the most thrilling kind of awakening you can have. Because you really realize in the biggest possible way that this is really, that it's completely up to you. It's completely up to you. That you, and also, you realize, and this is hard to get, but it's true, that from a non-relative or absolute or non-dual perspective, from who else could have decided to create the universe except you? If what all the mystics have said from, you know, from ever since human beings had the capacity for mystical awakening, they all say the same thing. There's only one. It's a perennial mystical awakening. Is that there's only one. So if they all say the same thing, they must be onto something. So if it's true that there's only one, then that means that you have to be, it could not be other than that one without a second. You beyond the ego, beyond the experience of sense of separateness, you have to be that one without a second, because who else could you be? Who else could any of us be? So if you are that one without a second, that means you have to be the only one that could have made the audacious decision to create the universe in the first place. Right? Who else could have done it? There is no, just one second. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I just want to finish. I promise. If I have time, I'll answer it in here, and I promise if I don't, I'll be outside.
What if all this is wrong? I mean,
see, I know. Let me finish. I knew this was going to happen. Just let me finish this. So the point is, anything's possible. But so if you realize if there's only one without a second, then you have to go. And even if you only get there by pure deductive reasoning, you have to know, if it's true there's only one, that means from an absolute or non-relative point of view, you have to be one with however that decision was made by who you were to do all this. The point is, it's you and you alone that made the choice to make all this happen way back then. And remember, when the universe was created, in the first, whatever it was, billionth of a second, all the matter in the universe could fit on the head of a pin. So we were all there together. We were all very cozily all there together before this all split up. But the point is, not only are we that one without a second that chose to create the universe, but we are that same one and that same only one right now that are in a position to take responsibility for where it's all going, because we're the only ones that have the capacity, especially at very high levels of development, in deeply expanded states of consciousness, to be able to cognize the whole process. That's what God is. God is the energy and intelligence that created the whole process, and also it's your capacity to cognize, become aware of it all. When you awaken to that God-like perspective, that's what God is. God doesn't exist beyond your capacity to cognize him or it. There is no God separate from you. And you have to realize how profound that is, because what that means is, and why that's so important, is if it's true, then we all have to take responsibility or strive to take responsibility for what that means, you know, and that's awesome. It's overwhelming. It's terrifying. It's big. It's the biggest possible predicament we could be in, but it's so positive.